Good morning, guys. Welcome back. This is Miss McCrae, and we are going to start Unit 5 this week. I really miss you guys, and I hope you are doing well and you're staying healthy in this time away from each other. But I do think that's going to be really wonderful that we can do some things online. Remember that, this video is going to be on Play Pause It, so I highly encourage you to take notes because as we go through the week, there'll be questions and things that'll pop up that you may want to use your notes for. Um, I plan to post the Prezi link as well so that you can make sure if you need to go back and get your notes, you can. But this video will be located in Play Pause It. If remember, you have the power to pause it and take a second to get anything written down. Remember, the Play Pause It will have questions in it, so you need to pay attention. Make sure you're using headphones, or you can listen to it out loud at home. I am available, so remember that you can email me or text me and remind. And if your parent needs to call me with any questions or anything that you're not sure about, please just don't hesitate to contact me. I am really missing you guys, and I'm looking forward to this new online platform. So today we're starting Unit 5, which consists of the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, Exploration, and Colonization. Now, that seems like a lot, but guess what? We're not doing all of that today. Today we're going to focus in on the Renaissance. I think you'll really enjoy it. The Renaissance moves us into more of a modern era after the Middle Ages, or the Dark Ages, or the Medieval Ages, whatever you like to call it. And the Renaissance is going to offer a lot of light and brightness, and there will be more education during this time. So I think you'll appreciate learning about it. We'll get to the Reformation and all the rest of the stuff in the days to come. So our topics today are going to be the Italian Renaissance. So if you can take a guess, where do you think that it started? Italy, of course, and then the Northern Renaissance, which will be Northern Europe, like Germany, Britain, France, those areas will also have the Renaissance. And so our essential question today is, how did the Renaissance lead to the modern world? As you delve deeper into all of this, these topics and things like that, you're going to see how the Renaissance kind of, left an impression that we still use some of the things that they have today. And so our first thing that we're going to look at is a timeline. So the Renaissance started in the 1300s after the decline of the Middle Ages, and it's going to run until the 1600s. And what you'll find is that as we get towards the end, towards the 1600s, we're going to have some other events that overlap, like some revolutions, like scientific, American, Haitian. We'll also have an Enlightenment movement and a fight against monarchs. But that's towards the end, and that's later, and it's a different unit. But I just wanted to go ahead and allude to that. So really quick, we're going to talk about the Renaissance. And the word Renaissance, what does the word Renaissance mean? And it means rebirth. Now, that doesn't mean that there's like a whole bunch of births of babies or somebody comes back from the dead. It really means that there's a rebirth of art, science, individuality, and secularism. And so what you want to do when you write in your notes is you need to, on individuality and secularism, you need to underline the root words, which the root word for individuality is individual, and the root word for secularism is secular. So really quick, we're going to talk about what that means. So the Italian Renaissance, first of all, the Renaissance starts in Italy. And if you know anything about Italy, Italy is a trade hub during this time. And so when we talk about that, there were three large Italian city-states during the Renaissance, okay? And they were significant for different reasons. So if you look here, Italy's right here. Here's the boot, and here's a zoom in on the cities. So with the Italian economy and their city-states, there were three big cities during this time. Venice, which was known for seed trade. Milan, which had agriculture, silk, and weapons, which is interesting because Milan is still considered a fashion hub for the world. Milan hosts Fashion Week every year because they are known for their fabrics. And then you have Florence, which Florence was known for their bankers. Miss McCrae has been to Florence, and Florence is very beautiful, and Florence now is known for their commerce or their trade, which we don't really trade, but we do buy products from Florence, like leather handbags and leather items. Florence is known for a lot of those things now. But during this time, they own the market on trade. I also want you to take a look back at this map. Think about the geography of Italy. Italy is a peninsula surrounded on three sides by water, which means that they're very accessible from Africa, Northern Africa, also the Middle East here. So think here on this little map area. You have Africa, the Middle East, and China. Remember the Silk Road. All these areas end up coming or being near the Italians, so they want to come in and trade from their ports. So, moving on, when we talk about it, what is humanism and how does it relate to the Renaissance? So the humanism has the root word of human, and so humanism during this time is going to be a movement that rises out of individuality. focused on worldly subjects rather than religious. So you're going to have a lot of artists and people during this time that are going to still believe in Christianity and Jesus Christ. I don't think they will always aligned with the Catholic Church, and you guys have realized there was corruption there even in the Middle Ages. So they're going to focus on worldly subjects like science and art and math and arithmetic and history. And you're gonna have people like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Castiglione, Machiavelli. So they're going to study the classics from Greece, ancient Greece and Rome. So they're going to read things like Homer or Aristotle, Plato. And they wanted to emphasize individual accomplishments, like people being a scholar, being educated. They emphasized on education in the humanities, like history, poetry, things like that. And then what is secularism? Well, to be secular means of the world. And so secularism is a worldly focus, it's not religious. So I want you to think about if someone publishes a book about the human body or the sun being the center of the universe, which during this time the Catholic Church didn't believe that. They believed it was the earth. Those would be things that were considered focused on the world and rather than religion, because in the Catholic Church, everything's centered around the Bible, the Pope, and Jesus and God. So, how did science evolve in the Renaissance? Science is going to have a rise during this time because people are going to be more educated. And so, they're going to want, people are going to study science. They're going to want to answer the question or answer and ask questions through observation around the world. Like, so they're going to look at the world and they're going to say, why was the world round? Or how do ships, go across the sea? Or how can I make this sail better? Or is the earth really the center of the universe? But I think it's the sun because we all orbit the sun. What's the circumference of the earth? And so they're going to ask these questions, and these questions, especially when we talk about the human body and all those types of studies, are going to directly challenge the church, because people are going to look at what the church says and say, I don't know if that's necessarily right or if that's correct. And if you know anything about the power of the Catholic Church moving from the Middle Ages to now, the Pope and the priests and all those individuals are not going to like that people are questioning their authority, because that's the only thing that they had to hold over people. And the fact that people were less educated and now people are becoming more enlightened. So, arts. Arts are a really big deal in the Renaissance. We have patrons who are like wealthy people or the church, and they hire artists. So, like, for instance, Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. It took him 4 years, and it's because the Pope forced him to do it. It's not that he wanted to do it. But then you had many artists who would be paid to paint portraits of people or families. Like the Medicis were a wealthy family in Italy. There are lots of paintings of them in Italy because, when you had a painting of your family during this time, it was like a sign of wealth. It's kind of like when you pay some money for a photographer to take a picture of your family. You have to have the dough to get the picture. All of the art during the Italian Renaissance was very really realistic, very humanistic, glorified the human body, and they used perspective. When I say perspective, I mean 3-point perspective, like it looked three-dimensional. Very different from Middle Ages art that you looked at. It was really flat and kind of weird. Also, they were heavily influenced by Greek and Roman culture. So, the last thing I'm going to talk about for the Italian Renaissance, and I'm going to go pretty quick through the Northern so you're not too bored, is what is a Renaissance man? So during this time, we have this concept of a Renaissance man, which is a cultured man of the Renaissance. So this person was knowledgeable, educated, was very proficient. When we say proficient, that means they could do a lot of different things in a wide range of fields, which means they were gifted. They could read, they could write, they could play music, they could speak different languages. So it was a person who was knowledgeable on the classics. It was also a person who was a man of action, so someone who was invested in the community. You could probably think of someone who would be considered a Renaissance man today. We're going to do something with that tomorrow. The next thing we have to talk about pretty quickly is the Northern Renaissance. So the Northern Renaissance is going to spread in the north. Due to the trade of the Italian Renaissance, it spread to cities like London, Paris, Amsterdam, and other places, Germany, all different areas. So this spread from the Italian Renaissance moved north into the rest of Europe. And so when we talk about it, how does trade spread? So during this time, we had a group called the Hanseatic League, and they dominated trade in the northern regions of Europe. So they controlled trade, they made sure the prices were fair, but also the Renaissance spread through trade, but also scholars. Remember, scholars are educated people like teachers and lawyers and doctors, people who are very educated, but definitely merchants would spread trade. And then the printing press. The printing press is going to be an innovation during this time created by a German named Johannes Gutenberg. And he's going to develop the printing press, and it has movable type and it mass prints. So when we think of the word mass means large, means a large amount. And so Johannes is going to create this printing press. This is like a sketch drawing of like what the printing press looks like. Guys, this is not, we have come a long way, because if Miss McCrae had to print your papers like this, you would probably never have any papers. But it had movable type, and they had to move each letter to kind of form the words. But the cool thing is that the Renaissance and mass printing is going to allow people to have more books. They can afford them, because when we mass produce something, the price of it goes down. They can learn to read, education increases, and the Renaissance spreads. So that's the awesome thing about this time. Zoom in there. You probably want to add this diagram to your notes. Like, it's just a little simple little circle. So if you need to go back and pause, you can. And last few things. So one of the first books that was mass printed was the Bible. And so I want you to think about, how could the Holy Bible being widely available to everyone affect the Catholic Church? So I want you to think about, how is this going to affect the Catholic Church when everybody's reading the Bible? They're not just listening to the Bible being read on Sundays at church. And then some features of Northern Renaissance art. I'm going to talk about really quick. So very similar to the Italian Renaissance, realistic. They use more symbolism in their paintings. And tomorrow you're going to look at some Northern Renaissance art. Today we're going to do a different art activity. But when we talk about Renaissance art, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a T-chart. Italian Renaissance art is over here on this left side. It idealized beauty, religious, and mythological scenes. So you may see Greek and Roman mythology, like Venus, Aphrodite, Zeus, people like that would make appearances in this art. Heroic males. A lot of times people are nude in Renaissance art, and so you got to kind of prepare yourself for that, because you're going to see some of that stuff. Formal. Sometimes they use fresco, tempera, or oil paintings, so they were really big on paintings. And then also they were really big on anatomical structures like the human body. Now on the flip, right here on the right side, you have intense realism, lifelike features, religious. So a lot of religious themes in the Northern Renaissance. And I think that deals with being in the Holy Roman Empire, a lot of the Catholic Church being influenced. There were still some humanistic traits as well, but you're going to see humanism more in the Italian Renaissance. Also domestic themes, like you'll see them at home or reading or working in their pictures. Citizens, peasants, individual personality of the artist, and then also a lot of times it's oil paintings or engravings on wood, and then a very visible appearance. So this is our notes today. It's a little lengthy, about 12 minutes, but take your time, work through it. There will be a few questions. You're going to play pause it. If you have any questions for me, let me know.